quality decision is a choice that matches God's desires for your life and moves you to take a specific corresponding action. I'll say it again. A quality decision is a choice that matches God's desire for your life and moves you to take a specific corresponding action to that choice. Now, I'm interested in something here today to help us to kind of look and maybe hopefully change some things, because every one of us in this room, and I said it a moment ago, we're a product of our decisions. Hello? We are a product of our decisions, whether they're good or whether they're bad. How many of you hear that? I made a couple of good decisions in my life. I've made a multitude of bad ones. I made one to say yes to Jesus, two to say yes to my wife. And there's a lot of decisions. You make about 1 million decisions, or 10 million or 100 million, whatever. But you really only make about 5. If you're going to give your life to God, if you're not going to get saved, that's a major decision. That alters everything in your life. That changes everything, sets the course in a different direction. You can change your life by deciding to give your life to God. And if you choose not to, you can perish in that, and it's a whole decision factor. One of the things that we all are a product of, we are a product of a free will. How many of you know who you marry, you take on whatever that is? My wife never had ever seen deer in a pot. She saw him on TV, Bambi. Her first time to cook it, she cried. She said, "I'm cooking Bambi." I said, "Oh my," some of y'all don't know who Bambi was, but anyway, I said, "Oh my God, you're not cooking Bambi." And, but she didn't know how to cook squirrel, rabbit, venison, and everything in between. And now she's so good at it, it's amazing. I sure didn't want to eat rice. I was a potato guy. And life does that when you decide to get married. How many of you hear that? That determines the next thing, which is, where shall I live, or we live? That's another major decision. And all your decisions filter from those. Where you're going to live can determine everything. You can decide to live in the place that will either keep you from your potential or will enhance your potential. A decision is a pledge or a mental contract to which you should be willing to sign your name as a demonstration of your commitment to its terms. Have you hear that? A quality decision is a pledge or a mental contract to which you should be willing to sign your name as a demonstration of your commitment to the terms of what you decided and made a decision to do. Quality decisions require that you go against everyone's else's opinion. And you got to be willing to take a risk and even risk your popularity or your reputation. I mean, sometimes you have to stand for God when no one else wants to. Hello? Look, Elijah was under a tree, and he's complaining that all of Israel had left God, and nobody. Paul said, look, all of Israel's left you. All of Asia forsook you. I mean, there's times where you got to decide, if everybody stopped serving the Lord, would you? It's a story about a guy named Jairus who was a leader in the synagogue. And Jairus had a daughter who was extremely ill. And Jairus went, after Jesus had finished the meeting, Jairus went and sought Jesus out. Now, you got to catch this story, because the story is a real picture of this whole thing about quality decisions. But Jairus sought Jesus out. How many of you know, if you were a leader in the synagogue, either Pharisee or Sadducee, how many of you know they were Sadducees. How many of you know Sadducees and Pharisees? How many of you know these are people that didn't find it comfortable, like Nicodemus. They sought Jesus out at night. You understand? To be seen with Jesus won't cool. Going against popular opinion. Are you hearing me? So he goes against popular opinion. He finds Jesus. He tells him what the issue is and says, please come to my home. And so Jairus and Jesus take off together and they go to towards Jairus' house. Now, on the way, a woman interrupts the process. She steps into the story. She steps into Jairus and Jesus' journey, and she stops the journey for a moment. And you know the story. She had an issue of blood, and she'd had it for 30-some years. She'd been to every doctor there was. She had spent a lot of money trying to be treated, and nothing could cure her. And you see that Jesus said, woman, your faith has made you whole. And she left and she was completely healed. She touched the hem of his garment. The crowd stopped long enough. Jesus declares, who touched me? Virtue left me, and who was it? It's a marvelous story. And then you see that Jesus and Jairus go on in the journey. Now, let me back out of the story now that you have the story. Some of you that don't have good Bible background understanding, maybe that helps you see this little story, because I'm going to use that story to help show you some points that might help us to make. How many of you want to make better decisions? How many of you want to make quality decisions in your life? In that story, Jairus' daughter was ill, of course, and then eventually she dies in verse 35. She's dead. Now, risking his reputation, that's number one. This ruler of the synagogue, Jairus, makes a quality decision. He makes a decision to believe that Jesus could help his daughter. And the decision moved Jesus to respond. How many of you want to make a decision that moves Jesus towards your life? Come on, saints. How many of you want to make decisions? How many of you know all of us have made them and he moved away? How many of you want him to move close? You see, some of us continue to make these wrong decisions, and Jesus gets further and further away, almost like the Gadareans that stayed back on the other side of Jordan, and the ark went across. We get away from God rather than close to God. Now, notice in verse 22 in Mark 5 there. In verse 22, when Jairus fell at Jesus' feet, and he gave voice to his faith, Jesus instantly got involved in Jairus' affairs. How many of you know that your decision needs to come in a crisis, needs to come through the vehicle of humility and desperate getting yourself back to God? Look, saints, I've seen pride keep people off this altar that needed to be at this altar so desperately, but pride kept them from the altar because they were afraid someone might see them. When you look horizontally, you never find anything but man. When you look vertically, you always find God. You listening to me? But because you're afraid of what popular opinion is, and you're afraid of how somebody might view you, you choose to compromise. Are you here today? Now, when you find a crisis and you find that you made bad decisions, roll up on the floor and seek God. Just fall at his feet and say, you know what? I've done some stupid things, and I'm going to tell everybody because I'm coming to the altar. Now, verse 25 and 28, the woman with the issue of blood, I don't want to leave her out. Her story is important, especially to her. Now, the woman with the issue of blood, she made a quality, good decision that she could be healed if she could just touch Jesus. She made a good decision. But I want you to know something. It was Jairus' decision that sent a ripple effect that made her decision have a platform to even work. Do you know that when you decide for God, you send out a ripple of others that can be drafted, children and family, and others can draft right into your decision. When you decide to choose not to serve God, you won't be on the same road with Jesus. You won't be in the place where he can do a miracle because you decided to go another route. She decided to make a decision that put her on a road where Jesus was walking. But her decision is not the decision that got her on that road. It was Jairus' decision that got Jesus to go on the road with Jairus that got the woman to go on the road she went. Do you know the ripple effect of our decisions is cost generations and generations their lives? Do you know our government keeps making these bad decisions over and over and over, and it's going to have a ripple effect for generations to come? We've got judges and lawyers that have put people in risk because of bad decisions. A president or a vice president or a senator or a congressman, they make decisions and it ripples out and it's going to affect us for the next 25 years. So Jairus makes a decision and someone else gets blessed by his quality decision. Verse 35 through 42, this is the story where notice that while he was still speaking, some came from the ruler of the synagogue's house, who said, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" Now, how many of you know there's always going to be those people that come to contend with your decision? You decide, I'm going to serve. Listen, when I decided, listen to this story. I decided to get saved. I choose to go to church. Jesus draws me. I can't come to him except he draws me. But I decided to go forward. So I get saved. I go home. Now, I've been in everybody's jail. My stepmothers had to pay money to get me to fly from California after they let me out of jail and to fly me home. I've been in jail in Carolina for fighting and stuff, and they brought me home. My stepmother see me come in so stoned and messed up that I couldn't even tell who she was. All that stuff. So I got saved, and I came home wide-eyed and excited, only to find out, oh boy, now you're into this Jesus thing. I'm not killing anybody. I'm not taking any dope. I'm going to be a good dad, and I'm going to try to be a good husband, and I ain't going to steal no more, and I'm going to drive my own car, not everybody else's, and wow. You're in that Jesus thing now. How many of you know that people are sent by the devil, are sent by demons to contest with your decision? Can you stand up to it? Can you sign on the dotted line and say, hey, as me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord? Now, Jairus' decision was even more important than he understood in the beginning. The little girl was just not sick, she was dead. Jesus didn't listen to those voices in verse 35 because they had bad choices. Unbelief is a bad choice. Unbelief is a choice, it's a bad choice. Jairus' quality decision gave Jesus complete, look at this. When Jairus decided he was going to honor Jesus, love Jesus, and invite Jesus in his home, Jesus took authority of his home. Oh, yeah? Yeah. Look, there's all these other folks there, and Jesus comes in. He's just a guest. But he comes in, and they're all going, she's dead. Get the professional mourners to come in. Let's do all right, you got chicken prepared, and you got meatloaf, okay? And we'll have the funeral, and after the funeral, we'll have a party. All that's going on, and Jesus walks in, and now Jairus says, you know what? I give you all authority in my house. I give you all of, and Jesus' first act of business, he looks around and says, excuse me, you, out. Who does Does this guy think I'm in the home of a synagogue ruler? That was a wealthy home. Who is this poor guy with sandals walking around with a bunch of hippies hanging out with him? Who does he think he is to tell me to get out? I'm the cousin. I'm the first cousin. I'm family. You ain't family. And out the house they go. Once unbelief and doubt had left, then miracles started coming in the house. Goodness and mercy had been following him all the days of his life. When Jesus went in the house, goodness opened the door, said, come on in, mercy. We're going in the house. And goodness and mercy walked in, and Jesus rose the girl from the dead. Your children will know life when you let Jesus in the house. She was 12 years old. She was 12 years old. 12 is the number of maturity. She was the place of maturity. It's like the church. When we let Jesus come in the house, we're going to raise up the woman. The church, we're going to raise up the mature church. But we have to cast out. One decision gets a woman with blood, a woman with issues, gets her healed. One decision brings a man into my home. He not only raises my dead daughter up, he cleaned up my house. He brought order to my house in one visit. Some of you need to realize one visit with Jesus might bring order in your home. You need to ask him, say, Lord, fall down on your knees. Get on your face. Fall down and say, Jesus, come home with me. Would you please? We need to rock church. We need to get in the prayer room and say, Jesus, come home with me. Come home with me until the girl is healed. The girl called the church. Your emotions will determine your decisions, and your decisions will determine your actions. If you're making decisions based on feeling, no wonder you're in trouble. How many of you know, look, Jairus didn't make a decision on a dead girl. He made a decision on a sick girl. Different level of decision. See, if it had been a dead girl, he'd, oh, please help. She's sick. Come home with me. It's okay. Just come home with me. How do you know that the emotion of the moment, the thought of the moment determines the decision which determines your actions? See, he didn't have a bad opinion in his head yet. He had a good thought still. Come on, are you listening? Life is a series of decisions. Your decisions are responsible for where you are right now. Joshua chapter 24, verse 15. Choose for yourself this day whom you will serve. Can you hear that? The power of the soul is the base of many of our bad and our worst decisions. The soul is the mind, will, and emotions. We know that, suke. That's the mind, will, and the emotions. The word for that is suke. And it's always in the feminine gender, and then spirit is always in the male gender. You have both operating in your life, and it's a struggle that goes on. And the Bible says in Romans there's a war between your soul, your flesh, and the spirit. Galatians 5. This will help you. How many of you say, Lord, I'm going to make better decisions than I made yesterday? Amen. Come on. Verse 16. I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. Walking in the Spirit versus walking in the flesh is actually a way of thinking, saints. It's not actual walking, it's more of thinking. As I think in the Spirit or as I think in the flesh. The difference between walking in the Spirit, thinking in the Spirit, walking in the flesh, thinking in the Spirit, is the point of view. God's point of view is spirit. Man's point of view is flesh. Hello? God's view is from His Word. God, I said it a minute ago, and I don't know if I got it. God's view is always vertical. Man's view, flesh, is always horizontal. Man sees this. God sees this. How do you know if we're going to walk in the Spirit, we need to think, see, and activate vertical thinking? How many of you say, Lord, I'm going to think above. I'm seated in heavenly places. I'm going to seat above all my enemies, and I'm going to start thinking from a heavenly perspective. Look at Matthew 13 and 53. And it says, let me find it. Now it came to pass, when Jesus had finished these parables, that he departed from there, and he came to his own country. He caught them in their synagogue, so that they are astonished, and taught them in their synagogue. So the astonished and said, where did this man get this wisdom and these mighty works? Is this not the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary? And his brothers, James and Jose and Josie and Simon and Judas? And his sisters, are they not all with us? Where did this man get all these things? How do you see that? Here's what happens that makes us make bad decisions. It is called the power of reasoning. These people are about ready to deny Jesus, deny his power, because if you look at verse 57, they got so upset, it says they got offended. These people looked at Jesus and said, I'm going to reason. Is this not just a man? Is it not the carpenter's son? And then it says in verse 58, it says, now he did not do many mighty works because of their unbelief. Reasoning can destroy the ability for God to even work. Flesh starts reasoning while you're trying to make a quality decision. Multitudes in the valley of decision. For the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. Now, let me tell you something. Decisions are in the valley because anybody can make a good decision when you're on top of the mountain. Anybody can decide when the view is perfect, beautiful, and you can see forever. But when you're down in the valley, there's a multitude down there that are saying, oh my God, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. How many of you say to me today, I need to make better decisions?